Hi, Leona. Thanks for joining me, friend.
Hi, Tasshin. Glad to be here. Thank you for your patience.
Oh, my pleasure. Uh, uh, so we have been mutuals for, gosh, it's probably been 4 or 5 years at least, and we've met in person a couple of times and have been connected through Twitter for quite a while now. And I would characterize you as one of what I call the wisdom queens, which is this uh, woman who is wise and loving and powerful and who is learning to share her gifts with the world and uh, giving the world her wisdom as a form of medicine. And so that's my interest in having you on and learning about you and your life and your gifts and how you see the world and what you're trying to offer the world. So we'll get into all of that, of course, but I'd love to ask you the question that I ask everyone about your life story. And for me, the specifics of who you are and what you're excited about and what you're trying to offer the world, what projects you're doing, what goals you have, what visions you have for the future, all of those are more easily digestible to me and make more sense to me if I understand where you come from and what your story is and what your childhood was like and what life experiences you've had that were formative. And so I really like to hear, even at some length, about people and how they think about their own life and what happened to them. Not just the facts or like a Wikipedia article of like, well, I was born in this year and blah blah blah, but like how do you make sense of your own story and who do you think you are in your own eyes? And telling a story is a chance to share that, not just the facts or, even notable memories, but to share that sense making of this is how I understand myself and who I am and what I've been through in my life. And so I'd love to hear from you, whatever you'd like to share about your life. Feel free to share at any length, short, long, in any way you like. I'm here to listen.
Hmm, thank you. Whew. Well, I'm just gonna feel into what comes up because there's, of course, so many angles to go at this from. Um, well, I was a very strange child, I would say. My memories of my childhood are like somewhat sparse and hazy, but the ones I do, there's like a few that are very, very clear and also actually for first person. I think a lot of them are kind of based on photos and what my parents told me and like some amalgated, memory construct. But there's a few that feel like I've lived them. Well, I was born in a small village in the Black Forest in Germany, which is close to the Swiss and French border and the Austrian border, in quite a conservative Catholic, not strongly religious, but just like as far as values go, and is just very, what are the neighbors doing? Build a house, have a family, be normal. um, and I just, I think I was just born strange. Um, yeah, what today would probably be diagnosed as autism, very, very sensitive. Something that today I recognize as energetically sensitive as well, but that took me a very, very long time to figure out. And yeah, I was in an environment that did not necessarily see or meet or reflect that sensitivity. And so it just kind of felt like there was no connection. Like I could not connect to other people, like to no one. I felt like my experience was just this bubble. Um, and I kind of built these very, very, very thick walls around myself because all I knew from the outside world was being hurt or being maybe ridiculed or just definitely not understood, like either like tolerated or kind of. So I didn't try for connection. I was very connected to myself and my inner world, and I would just like basically spend all my time reading and drawing and kind of creating these fantasy worlds where I put lots of sheets of paper together all over the floor of my room and would draw like roads and castles and forests and so on, and had these like little unicorn uh, figurines with which I would play there. And I would do this for days. And at some point, my mother would be like, "You have to take this apart. Like, we have to clean your room." And I was like, "No." um, and I just had a call with my mother yesterday, actually, where she told me that the number one thing I liked as a kid was caves. And I was always trying to build caves, like not actual caves, but, like blanket fort type things. Or I always wanted a space to retreat to and be alone and where no one could see me. Very important. And yeah, I could just be by myself. And I think for my parents that was pretty convenient because if I was dysregulated or like if I was, angry, sad, scared, I would just want to be alone, and then I would come out and be fine again. Um, and I didn't quite remember that. I know that I built a lot of caves, and I know that I spent a lot of time alone and was always trying to retreat somewhere where I had like an enclosure around me, basically. But I didn't remember that it was that prevalent from like three or four. Um, Funnily enough, I'm in a cave now. Um, right, so that was kind of the outset. I was just weird, but also very creative and kind of, you know, doing all right in my little bubble. I didn't really think that much about how the outside viewed me because I had like so little model of I did not understand other people. I couldn't talk to other children. I could kind of talk to adults. Um, I was like, I don't know, I learned to read at 3 or 4, and then I was put in school at 7. And the first 2 years I just spent sitting on a couch in the back reading while the other children learned to read and do math. And there wasn't really like anybody who ever said like, hey, maybe we should like give her something that doesn't make her brain rot away in boredom. Um, or just, yeah. I'm kind of sad about that didn't exist. But yeah, I was mostly fine because I just didn't really worry about how I was perceived and I didn't really care. I didn't like, I was fine in my fantasy world. Not fantasy world, I was just happy in my own company. Um, well, not happy. Things were difficult, but I had found an equilibrium, let's say. And then when I was about 10, 11, got put into a different school and just had the misfortune of, landing in a social group that was doing the whole like forming a group cohesion via excluding someone thing, and had a few really cruel kids in there. And so they just like heavily, heavily bullied me for some time. And I was, an easy victim because I definitely was strange. I'd just been kind of left alone about it, or at least not like strategically, you know. Yeah, and that part paired with a also very difficult home life just led to those walls becoming impenetrable fortresses, reinforced with absolutely everything my body, mind, and soul could muster. Um, so I was completely dissociated from my body, from myself, from everything. Like, yeah, I knew apathy and pain, basically, until I was like, I mean, really from like 10, 11 to like when I moved out, so like 19. Um, yeah, it was a pretty dark time. Also still somewhat creative, but just extremely isolated and dissociated. Should I just keep going? Or yeah.
I'm wrapped.
Um, well, yeah, after I finished school, I worked as a waitress for half a year, which was also horrible because I was only sleeping and working and being like sexually harassed quite a lot. Um, and then with that money, I just bought a one-way ticket to Bangkok and then stayed in Asia and traveled there to Nepal, China, and Vietnam and a few places until my money ran out. And then I moved to Berlin and got into the world of academia and techno clubs. Yeah. I feel like it's kind of a different thing to, I don't know, like I could, this is kind of the high level view of like, okay, life story. I also feel some interest in kind of going into more, uh, yeah, like direct experience of smaller things. But I don't know how
Mhm.
long you usually spend around this,
It's
this
your
complex.
choice. I'm happy to dive into specific parts, and I guess the first thing that comes up is, do you have a memory of what your inner world was like as a kid and what you did to find that equilibrium with
Mm,
your environment?
it's a really good question. Um, of I don't, funnily enough, like a memory comes up. I wouldn't necessarily say I have an answer. But I think that is probably my answer. One of my earliest, or possibly even definitely one of the very earliest memories, which is without going into the circumstances of how that situation came to be, that I was like three-ish, maybe four, and drowning in a pool.
Hmm.
Um, and I was well, part of the situation was I was on a water slide and from the water slide, basically, I just got in the water, but I could not actually swim. Um, and I remember really viscerally, like just the color of the water, the turquoise, and like being at the bottom and the weight, be feeling so held by the water, this pressure all around me, and some sunlight streaming in. And then my brother dived in and saved me. And but that moment, like I was, I'd swallowed a lot of water from what I'm told, and that moment of being underwater, it took me like quite a long time to relate that back to some other things. But for me, it's not a like bad memory. It's almost like it feels like it felt safe. Like I felt like, oh, I finally maybe it was like near death, or it felt like I was in a world that felt extremely hostile and scary and unsafe all of the time. Like my system was in stress and hypervigilance and fear all of the time. And then here I was suddenly being held and in this stillness and this, yeah. And from that, I think that feeling, um, that is like something that I returned to as a child. And then after 11-ish, it stopped being accessible to me. And I remember like standing in front of a mirror and like holding onto the sink and just like almost like shaking, being consumed by this deep, deep need or feeling of wanting to be underwater, needing to be underwater. And as I grew up, like as I became a teenager, that exact same feeling changed to I want to be in love. I want to be loved. I want to love. Like somehow that like longing, there's this deep, deep yearning. And I was like kind of laughing at, how when I was not when I was a child, like at, 14, 15, I was like, pff, and I couldn't conceive yet of what, this longing for love is. So I equated it with being underwater. And from where I stand now, this viewpoint may, of course, change again. It feels like all of that was, in a sense, pointing to essence nature and to that deep longing and deep yearning to be reunited with it,
Mhm.
to be at one. Mm. And maybe as a kid, I think I could somewhat rest there in just like yeah. I would, not in a yeah. Maybe I should not have said that. It's a slightly different thing. I think it's more of an embodied memory, but mm,
Mhm.
of safety or regulation, not a mystical experience.
Mhm. I could have used that. Uh, What were you looking for in Asia? Why did you go to Asia?
Mm, well, first of all, I wanted to just get as far away, as far away as I possibly could. And I'd always been drawn to Asia as a continent. I felt I really, really wanted to go to Nepal and Mongolia. Didn't make it to Mongolia, but I think just really wanted to see and experience like the highest amount of difference, basically, to what I knew, and just like throw myself off the deep end into everything the world had to offer. Um, yeah, like a longing for the unknown and for experience, and also just with Nepal, it was just like some strange pull, also.
Hmm. And what did you
Mm.
find there?
Mm. I found well, distance, some distance, and kind of resting in myself more. But I mean, I say resting in myself, you basically have to take into account that like, until my late 20s, it was basically just super traumatized, super depressed, just, happiness or positive feelings existed in maybe little temporary flukes, but uh, the general tone was one of deep, deep uh, depression and dissociation. Um, but what I found was, being having to rely on my own abilities and think on the spot and kind of, mm, in a way, almost like I'd interacted with the world through books. Like I'd just been like obsessively reading for my whole life until then. And suddenly here I was and could um, make these first person experiences instead of just sitting in my room reading about the world in books and the internet. And in Thailand, I found an animal clinic, an animal shelter and clinic that was, well, I kind of abducted a kitten that was being held in a cage and like dying in the exposure to the sun, and they wouldn't let her out, and so I abducted her and then I brought her to that clinic, and then I stayed at that clinic for 10 months. Sorry, 2 months, because the work they were doing was so needed there. Um, like at the time that I was there, animal welfare in that part of Thailand was really bad. Um, but it also broke my heart. Like I think I just was so unprepared for the heartbreak of that kind of work because like that kitten died and many other animals died. Um, and also just to see all that horrible mistreatment and just have it somehow like animals were always something where like these meter thick walls I could be like I don't care about humans, I don't care about anyone, like no one cares about me, and but animals would just like go straight to the heart. I couldn't yeah, so that actually kept me from going into that line of work more because I was like I will like die. um in Nepal I found a strange peace and calm. Also, the worst food poisoning of my life. I was in hospital for like a week in Kathmandu. That was not it. It's an interesting experience. But yeah, a sense of I was at Buddhanath Stupa, and I was not a spiritual person. I was like a super rationalist, analytic, like anti-theist. I insisted on like not being atheist, but anti-theist because I considered religion to be such a malevolent influence on the world and on people. And like from the frame that I was thinking, in like the maintaining structures of power and like historical influence and so on, I, you know, don't think that was like entirely off. Just what I considered religion to be was a little off. Um, but yeah, I think maybe being there, being on that ground, like I felt I, I had the energetic quality of that place was so strong that even in the state that I was in, and then I felt it. Um, China was extremely challenging, especially when I was traveling alone as a woman. Many in the mountains of Vietnam on a motorcycle. Also, there were like some experiences of violence and just yeah, like just a bodily vulnerability to the world that I had not known before. Mm, yeah, um, I think I learned independence and self-reliance in some way, and to separate myself from the story that my family or my peers at home had about me.
And what did you study when you went to Berlin and did an academic arc for some time?
At first, I studied art history and philology because I wanted to actually study fine art, and I had sent in a portfolio because the Berlin Art University is famous for never ever accepting a first portfolio. So I sent one in that was like bad, and then I thought like I'll travel through Asia and just do these watercolors and paintings from life, and it'll be great. And I just totally just did not do that. And I was traveling, it just didn't happen. And I never sent in a second portfolio because I then, once I moved to Berlin, kind of entered a few years of just freeze. I think like just functional or semi-functional freeze. Um, and I then changed what I was studying to film and media studies and communication sciences. And film and media studies is basically what I went up to PhD in. And then I quit about a year ago after 4 years. So I kind of was like AB, like all but dissertation. Um, but it was not right for me, and I very much knew it. And I also studied computer science on the side at some point. But I have not written my thesis. I think I just did the whole degree. um, so it ended up in being kind of a digital humanities, yeah, audiovisual media focused thing,
Hmm. You said that earlier in your
and some
life
AI stuff.
you said that earlier in your life you were an anti-theist and you weren't yet aware that you were energetically sensitive. How did you start to come to the awareness that you were energetically sensitive and presumably your worldview and way of relating to yourself and the world is quite different now than when you were an anti-theist. How did that shift start to happen?
Whew. So, I mean, I knew this would come up, of course. It's the first time I'm talking about it publicly, and I've kind of avoided it for many years. To write about it or talk about it publicly. I do talk about it with people in conversations, but it's just such a like putting words to things that are not expressible in words, and that if you do not have the direct experience, kind of land in, whatever way you are primed for them to land. But I'll just try my best. And I think, yeah, I've kind of thought about the not value, but more like, is it right to share these kinds of experiences and to talk about them, or do they are they kind of sacred and to be kept under wraps? Or yeah, but I'm choosing to experiment with talking about it. Yeah, so for me, it wasn't a gradual shift. It was a kind of unprompted, spontaneous awakening experience that back then I had no idea what was happening, but from it's 4.5 years later now, and I've very intensely studied and practiced and explored and felt in that time, and also found teachers, found community, and yeah, it was in the tradition I mostly practice in now. It would be called Shaktipat. I conceive of it as an act of grace, as a it's not something I did, unless of course, like I did it. But Yeah, it basically was just a full experience of the ground of being. No space, no time, no self, the void. Mm, the full thing as far as I can tell. And or the empty thing. And then I think the interesting part was kind of well, being blasted apart, of course, was, but I don't really remember the disassemblage as much as I remember like the place. But then the reassembling, um, that was like slower, and that's the part that was really, really scary because it's the part where the like some sort of like me attractor comes back, and it of course thinks it's dying, it thinks it's going insane. It's just, yeah, it's extremely terrifying. And I had no context, like none. I was I had read some Buddhist philosophy, like Buddhist text, no, not text, but like I knew roughly about Buddhism as a philosophy, but I had no idea um about like, and something like, we are all one or whatever. Like I considered that like hippie bullshit. Like I'd never looked at a spiritual text or heard, like it was not a thing in my world. It didn't exist. I'd never truly taken that idea seriously, or even like really knew what was at the core of what we call mystical experience. So I just uh for some weeks kind of was like half in, half out of that, and pretty convinced I was going insane, but kind of had come to this equilibrium where I was really afraid of being like taken into an insane asylum or something. Because I was like, if anyone finds out what I now am convinced of reality is, they're just gonna lock me away forever. While at the same time being like suffused by this like everything, like the most beautiful thing you could have possibly ever imagined is true. Like you come from this hell, and suddenly you're like but you're also still somehow a human, and it's just very confusing. And so after kind of the really intense flashbacks had stopped, I did what I tend to do in situations that, you know, overwhelm me. I just like researched. I just went like, yeah, went really, really deep into all kinds of research. And I had is yeah, one beautiful gift was that I had this like internal source of truth, almost like a bell in my chest, that when I read something where I felt that that was the direct experience that I'd also had, it would like ring that bell and resonance would flood my body. And I knew that that person was talking about the same thing that I had experienced using whatever words they're using. Um, and yeah, so I kind of like read and read and was like, okay, this seems to be this thing that people have been experiencing for thousands of years and like are talking about. Maybe I'm not like, and it just gradually, gradually, gradually moved from, okay, I am not having like a psychotic breakdown. I am eh, actually seeing the truth of the true nature of reality. And people have seen this before, and there are ways of processing and integrating this. And yeah, that was like 2021. So it was COVID, and I was working from home, and I was like doing PhD and was a researcher in two projects. But yeah, everything aside from what I had just learned and experienced, of course, became completely irrelevant for me. So I would attend meetings, but I wouldn't like write articles or do any. I was employed as a researcher, so a lot of my job was basically working on my own academic career. You're expected to like give lectures and write articles and just kind of be prolific if you want to get ahead. And I, instead of doing that, I just would kind of, as soon as I wasn't forced to be in some meeting or task, just like fall back on the floor or on the bed and like drop into drop into essence nature or the void. Uh, and just like I was meditating like 6 to 8 hours a day. Before then, like I had sometimes meditated in like a mindfulness type thing, like trying to make my mind a blank slate of paper or something. But of course, I had no conception of what meditation actually is. um, and now when I say I meditated 6 to 8 hours a day, that's people like now sometimes ask me like, "Wow, how did you manage that? How did you do that?" I'm like, "Oh no, you didn't understand." Like, it was like blissing out into the most beautiful thing you could like. I was afraid of becoming a meditation vegetable. Like, I thought I would never want to do anything else. I kind of thought I had a problem. But retrospectively, I think that there was a lot of innate like body mind wisdom to that because all that time spent in Nirora Samapati functionally, um, I feel like rewired my nervous system because it had for my entire life known nothing but fear and hyperarousal. Um, and yeah, it takes I think quite a while to, and it is still the process is far from done. But I think that year and a half of being like washed through with what I just am going to call essence nature. We can call it whatever we want. Really, yeah, really helped. Kind of almost. It feels like my body or my being as such were like hollowed out by pain and just made like really, really large. But that container had to be like widened even more maybe, but also kind of rewired to now hold that same amount of love and be able to pour it out, which in those years, like I was still pretty in it. So being with other people, just there was no longer this like it used to be. I talked to someone and like maybe 30 to 50% of my attention is on them and the rest of it is on me and how do I come off and like anxieties I have and I don't know, whatever self-denigrating stories I'm telling myself. And yeah, at that point I could be like just basically fully only with the other person and just like shower them mm, in loving awareness in that, yeah. um yeah, and that I don't have that same type of access anymore that I had then, um which I think is fine. Like it's different now and I had it when I needed it. um but yeah, actually this whole research arc is also how I found TPOT, which was a big deal for me because I had finally found like a cluster of people who weren't like just, you know, super woo spiritual weirdos who had abandoned all semblance of critical thinking or epistemic rigor, but they were these former rationalists who, through direct experience, had come to the same conclusions as I had. And so I was like, okay, further evidence that I am not going insane. Great. Um, but then finding spiritual community in some sense, of course, leads to mystical states and like attainments being like reified and even made into markers of social status and being like this thing that people are like trying to get to. And it was very, very strange to, I didn't, I have you tend to question myself and doubt myself like quite heavily. And so I was like, oh yeah, no, it can't be that I experienced this thing that they're all trying to experience, right? And I have no idea what I'm doing or talking about. And so also like some people, there was like, some people put me on a pedestal, other people were jealous, other people doubted it. And I was just like, I have no idea. Like I'm not even claiming anything. I don't know how to navigate this. And yeah, I think that kind of twisted something in my head where before that is like the I didn't have my ego didn't have anything to hold on to as far as like spiritual states go. And then like yeah, just this new ego was kind of formed that's like, oh yeah, I am a spiritual person. I am a person who has um is very small and very subtle, and I didn't notice it at the time. I, that's my story now, at least. And yeah, like my teacher disagrees, actually, in some sense. He's like, no, you actually are not. Like the thing you call me attractor that makes you think that you're not awake right now is actually fine. You don't have to be in Summer show all the time. But mm, the point is the type of access that I felt changed. Um, I've described it to someone actually just a day or two ago as I'm not sure how much I stand behind that metaphor, but maybe before, like now I'm sitting and looking at the lake, and I see the lake. It's right in front of me. I know it's there. It's beautiful. I love to, I feel it. And before that, I was like immersed at the bottom of the lake. um, yeah, but I don't think I need to be in order to be nourished by its waters.
Could you say something about the circumstances in which that sudden awakening Shaktipat type experience happened?
Mm. Yes. Yeah, it's gonna open up a whole nother can of worms though.
I'm here for it, but
Um,
you do you.
yeah, so I was on about 60 micrograms of LSD, which just for people like in context is like for me it's like about a third of a dose and something that normally would not even cause any visual hallucinations or yeah, be pretty subtle. And I'd also up to that point done quite a lot of psychedelic trips, and many of them um, also like blindfolded and alone, and not actually for therapeutic purposes, but because I kept like almost I was like trying to philosophically understand what it was showing me. I was like trying really, really, really hard to grok the nature of reality, and I thought I could like understand it as a structure. Um, and that night, yeah, that's, I think it was just kind of, it almost feels like, like a dog peed on the carpet and the dog owner is not a very nice person and just like takes the dog's face and like rubs it in its own piss, like, can you fucking get it? Like, yeah, so just like blew me completely apart. There was nothing outwardly clearly different about, yeah, was there was no reason for it to happen. Um, I want one thing that I think contributed is that a few years before I had kind of discovered this was like 2018, early 2018 or so, before the whole trauma thing had become a big buzzword. Until then, I'd always thought in terms of personality disorders, and I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I this abjectly like desperately unhappy? Um, and then I never really, yeah, well, and then one person kind of went, yeah, what, this is like complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And I was like, what is that? Looked it up, got into a research rabbit hole, wrote my master's thesis also about like the phenomenology of trauma in some context with visual media. I always try to shoehorn my own interests into my research. And I discovered somatic work, which for the first time, when I like that, once my eyes were open to that, I was like, oh, so the body is the API to the mind, and like that's why nothing has ever helped in understanding why I'm like this or what maybe made me this way is completely unhelpful. And so I yeah just learned some techniques of somatic regulation, and I think that created conditions of like at least minimal safety in my body that were necessary for me to actually like receive or be able to accept or hold the realization.
How does it feel to talk about this?
It feels in my body it feels like pretty good. Like I feel quite a lot of energy. But it's very like kind of bubbly. It's like a pleasant sensation. In my mind, it's a little um ambiguous because I am just quite aware of yeah, it's just a difficult thing to state plainly and let yourself be seen in.
Hmm.
But it is the truth of my experience. So
I'm grateful to hear it. It's a medicine for me and inspiring and clarifying. And yeah, I'm glad that you're sharing. Um, so this part of your story happened in 2021. What transpired between 2021 and 2025? What would you like to share about that arc of your life?
ooh, well, it's been quite a ride. Um, I would say the first year, 2021, was basically integration, internal integration, because my entire worldview and personhood like got shattered. So well, there was some work to do, and then early 2022, I started kind of foraying out into finding the others. Mm, because once I'd, done some of the integration, I felt a pretty deep this like longing to be with others into whose eyes I could look, and we would both be aware that we are not separate. Because not having that around me at all, which I didn't, and felt just really lonely. Um, in some sense. Yeah, this whole thing of like looking into someone's eyes and not actually being seen, of course, was also, the whole experience of my life, but had this is a different dimension of it almost. So yeah, I started traveling a lot and going to all kinds of events, TPOT and otherwise. This kind of thing had also been part of my life pre-COVID. So like as soon as just of the different, slightly different subcultures, but ones where there is now actually quite some overlap to TPOT. People like I knew from 2016, 2018. Um, yeah, so basically just I would just be around and talk to people and make connections, and I still do that. But while during this time, I still had like an apartment in Berlin and a long-term relationship and two jobs and 2 degrees and stuff that I was working on. Um, and I just did all of that like on the side and kept this like stable container. And I think yeah, it was very, very, very difficult. Like it took me another 1.5 years until August, like mid-August 2023, um, to where the point came where I just like had gone too far in my internal growth and mm, assimilation of like the things that I was given and taught and had seen, that I had the finally had the strength, but also it became kind of inevitable to change my external circumstances as well. And so I quit my job and left my relationship and basically left my apartment as well and have been like I still, it still exists. My stuff is there. Just other people live in it. And I'm, yeah, basically full-time traveling. Occasionally I'll go back to Berlin for like 1 or 2 weeks. Actually, this year I was there for over a month because had to recuperate. But yeah, full-time travel and kind of almost like cross-pollinating between different groups of kind, curious, interesting people across the world.
Hmm.
And of course, learning a lot, like just uh, e- exploring and experimenting with practices and yeah, and on all kinds of level, like from like personal, spiritual, but also body based, quite a lot, creative expression. Mm, yeah.
Hmm.
Oh, and I also did some work stuff, like I was running a sauna company in Mexico for a bit in 2024, and do yeah, like oh yeah, I also put on like some events or helped run events and did like experience design type stuff or rituals or space. Yeah. Yeah, actually event and community organization is has been a pretty large aspect of my life as well.
Hmm. I'd like to ask a question that is the same question, but with two faces or facets of the same, two different ways of asking the same question, and you can answer either one or both or whichever way makes most sense to you. But they're the same question, two angles. Um, the simple way to ask it would be, how do you currently understand what spiritual practice is? And the, I think, more interesting or juicy or fun way to ask it is, if you could speak to your past self who was an anti-theist, your younger self, earlier in your life, how would you describe to her what practice is or why it matters or what she should do, how she should practice?
Oh, that's yeah. Well, I think to my anti-theist self, it would be very difficult or almost impossible to describe because she really thought she, knew what the world is like, and this like seeking truth thing has always been in me as a deep value. But back then, I thought truth was to be found in epistemological structures, whereas now I think it is to be found in direct experience. But I back then had this uh, self, like this identity story of like people are just too weak to accept the truth of the dreariness and meaninglessness and like of reality, and so they make up stories and they believe in things that feel good because they can't face like the vast abyss of of what actually is. But I will not. I will just like choose suffering for truth, so to speak. Um, and so I just really was very convinced of having, because I had like truly introspected deeply and had like read widely, right, and had like spent all of this time looking really, really, really hard at things and trying really, really hard to understand them, just from a somewhat limited point of view. Um, but yeah, I think I had very strong psychic defenses in place against like any, and still do in some sense, about like any outside influence on like my bootstrapped ontology. So I would have just considered myself loony and not listened to me. Um, Whereas my child self, I think if like a loving, gentle woman had come and like taken her into her arms and told her, like, just kind of given like a few pointers to a state that maybe, you know, at that time made sense to her, and I think makes sense to many children. Um, yeah, I think that would have been extremely fruitful. And what would I have said to her? Well, I mean, I couldn't not reference the underwater. I think I would definitely point to like kind of just guide her to somatically drop into the experience of being underwater and to not think about it too much or no, no need to do anything, just like fall back and relax into that water, maybe see the sun, see the and let that feeling wash through your body. Um, that is also pretty close to like what I kind of conceive of spiritual practice as like there are many methods and many access points, ways of getting there, depending on like the specific calibration of your body, mind, soul, complex being, whatever. A different one will work for you, or for me. But the point that they get to, that they're ultimately leading to, like if you take a practice all the way, and if that practice is indeed, functional, then that's the same point. And so I don't think it matters too much how you go about it, as long as you're not focusing on like what you're doing in the meditation, like the method itself, but on the state uh, of consciousness that it is pointing to.
Hmm. Hmm. How would you start talking about what spiritual practice is to someone who wasn't your younger self, but, you know, a friend of yours, for example, or uh, a stranger you met on the street, or
Oh God, I wouldn't.
uh-huh. How about
I honestly try to avoid it.
a charitable, patient, kind, curious friend of yours?
Well, I think I would tell them some of what I told you. Um, Depending on what their starting state is, right? What are the beliefs they hold now? How do they see the world? I would attempt to kind of find I don't know, like if there's, like you're building like rails for little cars or something, and like find somewhere where I can start building rails that attach to where theirs end. And then either by relating it to my own direct experience or going from their direct experience to something that's like adjacent enough that it feels accessible to follow. And then like take then just kind of intuit a practice that is compatible with that and suggest that to them. Mm.
Hmm.
I think I would like probably try to say the minimum necessary amount and that is necessary and like but enough to inspire them to try it, and then kind of yeah, go from direct experience, because I don't want to be telling people of like this is what's going to happen, or like this is what you should be experiencing, or this is why you're doing it. It's kind of just mm.
Hmm. What have you learned over time about caring for yourself and helping your body and like regulating yourself? And, if you are this very energetically sensitive person with this nervous system that had this childhood and has these gifts and these strengths, but these challenges, like what have you learned works for you to help yourself to regulate?
Mm. So much. Well, my current routine, which is kind of the I've tried many things, and this is, I think for me, the most effective setup is like I have, a set of things that I attempt to do every day, or just intend to do every day, which is I try to have my feet on the earth for like directly on the earth for at least 20 minutes or so. Ideally, I'm in the sun, getting some natural light. And then often I will meditate while I do that, just connect to the earth and connect to the sky and the through line between them. Um, if I can, I sauna. That's a really big one for me. Like vasoconstriction and vasodilation are super, super powerful for me in regulating my system. and just getting to a body mind baseline from which I can like where I can operate from a quiet state. Um, or where basically like I create the conditions for what needs to um arise or emerge to come out rather than making it happen. So sauna and ideally cold plunge also. Ideally really submerging in cold plunge because again vasoconstriction. Um, and also the dopamine uh, rush and the energizing effect of it is really beautiful. I lift weights. Um, so like strength workout is also really really regulating and stretching, breath work. Breath work is like what I would say less powerful for me than for some people. Nadi Shodhana is very powerful, which is like alternate nostril breathing, or also like stomach vacuums, that kind of thing. Um, yeah, meditation, of course. Currently, I'm also doing a decent amount of just like being present with the subtle body, which is different from meditation for me in the sense that I'm just like putting my awareness, like kind of seeing where my body, where there is maybe some tension or, yeah, and just kind of hanging out there and loving it or something like that. Seeing what comes up. Self massage actually is also really nice. For that can be just lymph drainage or it can be for tension release. Singing and humming and making sound are big for me. Like if my body wants to make a lot of noises and if I am in a space where that can't happen, I will notice, like it will accumulate. And I'm actually rarely in spaces where I can make as much noise as I would like to. So yeah, I found some workarounds for that, vocal mufflers, for example. But yeah, making sound and feeling the vibration of that sound in my body, making like there's like an intuitive thing of my body knows how it wants to vibrate, and so then I just make the sounds that do that. um, yeah, I think that are those are some of the main ones.
Hearing you talk about that, a certain metaphor came to mind that I'd like to share and ask you a question about, which is like it's almost as if you've learned really well how to cook and you're like an excellent cook and you have your own kitchen and you know that if you go in the kitchen, it's like, well, I like these knives for this purpose and I use this colander for this and this pot for this and I'll use the stove for this, but the oven for this and the freezer for that or whatever. Um, and in this metaphor, I'm like not such a good cook, and I'm like seeing the kitchen, and I'm like, wait, what even is a freezer, and like why would you use a freezer instead of an oven, or like how do you know which one to use when, and that's a little bit simplistic because I also regulate my body, but I'm wondering, I'm trying to get at something like it's a two-part question, which is like how um, what even is regulating the body? What is cooking in this metaphor? And how do you know which tools to reach for when, oh, I need a knife or a spoon or an oven. Oh, I need the sauna versus humming versus, you know, uh, the other things that you mentioned. Like, what is the general thing, and how do you know for yourself which one you need when?
Mhm. Um, well, I would say that they're like, if I do need a specific one, I will pretty clearly feel that. Like, I need to run, I need to lift, I need to like expend power versus I need to rest, I need to do some yoga nidra or sound coming out. But they're also somewhat interchangeable, like in some ways. Like I don't, when I do like a workout every day in sauna or meditation, I don't just do that in the moment when I feel like I need to, but rather just as part of my day, whenever it fits well. Um, and then afterwards, I notice I feel better. And yeah, or sometimes, if I'm tired today, for example, I just did not sleep well or didn't sleep much the last 2 nights, and so I didn't lift weights today because I felt like my body needed a break. it's very intuitive. There's really no, I don't think you can do it wrong. Um,
Hmm. I'm also hearing that it's iterative and that like every time you do something, you learn from it and oh, that felt good. And because you've tried
mhm,
a lot of things, you've kind of learned, oh, this works for me in this situation. And then that becomes
yeah.
intuition.
Right. Oh yeah, I think maybe one thing is I don't super often regulate in response to a situation. Like when something dysregulates me, now I have to regulate. It's more that I just do practices consistently to maintain a very regulated baseline that
Hmm.
then also is usually somewhat hard to dysregulate
Hmm.
or bounces back
Queen,
quickly.
queen shit. Yeah. Um, hmm. I have another question, which is I want to ask you about this tweet that you wrote recently. I'll read it aloud first. And there's many questions I could ask about this, but I'll ask a yeah, I'll ask several questions about this. The tweet is, my life increasingly feels like the X-Men are assembling. Now all we need is a big mansion and a bald telepath who knows WTF is going on. Um, let's see, what do I want to ask about this? The first question is, if you are one of the X-Men in this metaphor, like who are you? What are your powers like? And please feel comfortable slash invited to be accurate, which is to say to appear like you are bragging about yourself, because I want to hear the truth, which is you're awesome and what your gifts are and what your strengths are and really how again how you make sense of that yourself. It's like, well, I'm really good at this, and I'm sure you know about your flaws and your weaknesses and your challenges and the things that are hard for you and the things you haven't learned yet and we can know that you're learning and growing. Everyone's learning and growing. I'm learning and growing. You're learning and growing. Whoever's listening to this is learning and growing. But if you wouldn't mind telling me just what kind of X-Men you are, what your powers are, how you see them, I would love to hear that.
Oh, this is hilarious because I was like, wow, this question, like, there's like three inroads at least that I could see taking, and this was not one of them.
Yes.
Enjoy that though. Well, yeah, I think I can only give one answer. Partially because I'm not a big, like, I haven't read the comics and so on. I like watched the X-Men movies, the
And that,
first
well, and to
three
be
when I
clear, I don't
was,
mean like which analog are you in the, although I
oh,
think that's very obvious, but I mean, can you
is
tell me what
that,
your strengths and powers are? What your
oh
gifts are as you
no,
see them? How would you
oh
characterize who
God,
Leona is and what she's bringing to the team?
oh God, that's even harder.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
obvious, Jean Grey. We all, that's obvious. I don't need to ask that question.
Well, yeah. Um, I've been told. And also like I really felt her sometimes. Yeah. What are my powers? Phew. I mean, honestly, it feels like on a metaphorical level, I've had some experiences a few months ago actually with a common friend and another common friend just going through like an energetic process almost, and it had to do with me being afraid that I'm evil and just like not trusting my own inherent goodness because for so much of my life I kind of had to build these walls and had to tell myself almost like I don't feel because feeling would have hurt too much. So it just and then this fear that I that somehow might be evil paired with just a feeling of raw power um made me very fearful of that power. And in this shared experience, I kind of was able to go into that and just like unleash it in the inner world, and it looked very much like these. I have some images in my mind of Jean Grey just like basically going like this, and just the earth itself just breaking apart, and I was like destroying planets at some point, and just yeah, it was a very Kali-esque fest of just destruction and creation, and so there seems to be something about like tearing, like breaking apart structures, but like with love somehow, and also being there to put them back together. Um, yeah, like a re like I think yeah, something about breaking things down to build them up again in a way that is more aligned and beautiful and true, uh, and holding that process in love.
What does that look like? Can you give me a story about a time that you did that, or give me a sense of what that might look like?
It can look like, well, there's a thing that happens sometimes in conversation where somebody tells me something and I maybe like I see a structure to it that is not obvious to them, and I point out that structure. And by pointing out that structure and making them look at it, they see that it is false, and it breaks down, which has which can sometimes be quite, you know, leave quite a lot of wreckage. So I've become very careful about doing that. So this can happen in yeah in articulation basically of a semantic pattern, I guess, or pointing to it in that way. But it can also happen depending on that person's maybe experience with meditation or uh, deeper states of consciousness in eye contact or in energetic exchange. Um, yeah, and I'm in a sense, yeah, just it happens by itself sometimes, and I'm kind of just as I learn more about it. Mostly, like what I'm learning first is to just like be very clean about like just stay keeping to myself with it, unless explicitly, very explicitly invited to do otherwise. And yeah, we'll see how it develops.
Hmm. Thanks for answering that question. What were the three inroads to talking about that tweet that you were anticipating?
One was something like, uh, well, no, I wasn't anticipating those. They were more the ones that because you said that, and I was like, oh wow, this is like doubly relevant right now. Because one would, of course, be what does that mean for the X-Men to be assembling? Like, what are the X-Men to you? What are the kinds of powers? And then that's one. And then also, like, what is you're talking about they're assembling like right now, so what has changed, what is happening, and then the other is the mansion that we need, because there's just something in the pipeline that basically is a mansion that I will be I will be running and opening, and
Hmm.
yeah, it is very 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 early days, so I'm excited to talk about it, but also somewhat hesitant to talk about it because it's a bit like maybe talking about a pregnancy before the
Right.
third second trimester.
Sure.
But
I have a few of those things going on in my life myself right now.
yeah,
Um, well, I'd love to hear whatever you feel comfortable sharing of those things about, yeah, what the metaphor means and where we are and this mention. If you feel like talking about it, whatever you'd like to
yeah.
share, I'd love to hear about those things.
Yeah, I'll maybe start at the simplest thing, like the act of assembling, or like what's happening there. What is that movement in time? And it feels like, I mean, we're both part of like a global network of communities and of individuals, and kind of have a felt sense, I think, of these nodes. And the structure also is like very rapidly becoming more and more like the edges are becoming thicker, so to speak, and more. It's like interconnecting more tightly, and there seem to be like quite a few people who kind of are key actors who seem to be acting from a similar sense of like just get get together all the people who there are different attractors, I guess. For me, it's kind of I would like to get together in one place people who have as, unmediated access to actual reality as possible. Others have different attractors, but they're, I would say, at least adjacent. So there seems to be this urge to assemble people, to like get people into one place so that they can cross-pollinate, collaborate, and become like together become more than they are themselves. And yeah, that's happening, has been happening, and it feels like it's accelerating. And also just via basically moving through these networks for many years now, and in a sense there is a certain like you just find who you resonate most with, right? And like the depth of resonance, and then also the number of people with which that resonance is possible, is just possible to get like 12 or 15 of us together and do some really amazing shit.
I think I missed something there. You said the depth of resonance that's possible, and then 15 or it's impossible to get 15 or 20 people together.
Oh, okay. The depth of resonance and also the number of people with which
Mm,
that resonance is possible or exists. Yeah, is now higher than ever
mm.
for me, and for the first time at a point where, I mean, where it feels like it would be doable to get 12 or 15 together who like with each other have that really strong resonance and
I
can
see.
support each other in bringing what they are to the world.
Mm-hmm. 100%. How would you characterize what this global network is? I completely agree with your characterization, but I want to again know how you make sense of it.
Hmm. Hmm. That's a really big question, and I feel like there's many answers. Like it's kind of like, the what corner of Twitter, like we each have our own, and this network is also, it's like overlapping circles that move away from each other, and at some point don't even have any overlap anymore. Um, so I think there's definitely an aspect to this where via either somatic work or embodiment experiences or psychedelic experiences or just pure spiritual or mystical experience in meditation or something else, or maybe also even flow states that you know, like artists and athletes get into, but v- in different ways, kind of people have been finding access points to maybe deeper layers of their consciousness and their perception. Um, and like maybe as we're becoming more alienated from the world around us and the earth and ways of living that agree with our nervous systems, kind of that dissonance and the discrepancy and the suffering, like the pressure of the pressure cooker is just kind of like becoming the pressure is becoming higher, and so maybe a few more people are kind of popping, and then the information is just much, much, much more widely available. So if you like now, if you have some sort of strange experience on psychedelics, you don't have to like abandon your life and go to India. You can just like Google it and hang out in Teapot for a bit and go some of the way there. Have some sort of glimpse and realization, and maybe yeah, alter what you value in life based on that and how you want to act and how you want to relate to others. Um, and that also alters who you want to surround yourself with and like what you want to do together and alone. So it's some of that. Then it's also, of course, I think like the urge to build, to like yeah, can be like in a completely non-spiritual sense, just finding your intellectual peers and equals and betters and being inspired and inspiring each other to like kind of almost Bell Labs is kind of something that comes up for me in this a lot, like the whole idea of scenius and of just yeah, having expansive, generative, inspiring interactions with the people around you that make you more. creative and more productive and ultimately happier because you're understood and seen. Also creating art, creating social spaces in which we feel nourished and yeah, just kind of seeing that lack in how many of us grew up and then having the internet as a great connector and filter and beacon.
Hmm. Do you have a sense of what kinds of people you are drawn to, or what kinds of X-Men you're wanting to collaborate with or create with, or yeah.
um, I would say really a very diverse mix of people. Like it's very like yeah, I think we benefit from a multitude of viewpoints and vantage points. So and I personally as well like have so many different interests and like viewpoints in me, like artist and engineer, or like I've got this like very analytical, very cerebral, kind of like high speed, just like talk and think and research and build and do side, and then also this very relational, artistic kind of let things happen, make things beautiful, be very loving. It's kind of hard to describe, but yeah, I think I want as many aspects of the diamond as possible, and ideally united by just kind of by an inner clarity, maybe. I think actually, yeah, one maybe uniting factor, and I don't know if, yeah, it's something like people who don't believe their own thoughts too strongly,
Hmm.
or who understand thoughts and thinking as tools, as very valuable tools, but do not believe them to be true. Um, that's probably maybe too hard to find, but in like at least my close relationships, yeah, if my opposite part believes thoughts can be true, then there is kind of a deeper issue at hand that is difficult to bridge.
Hmm.
Mm. But no, I think more important are like for this kind of getting people together, is ownership of your own experience, like responsibility of your towards your own experience, and kindness, curiosity, compassion towards others, genuine interest and kind of loving presence. But then also, I really value kind of like people who are kind of at the tail end of the bell curves in at least some traits. And I'm aware that like being at the high tail end sometimes comes with being at the low tail end in others, but just like outliers, people who like, you know, like are cross-disciplinary, but as a being who um I don't know, I really like idiosyncratic and unique complex vantage points. And then what they're looking at is kind of secondary because anything can be interesting, anything can be valuable, and the more the more out there it is, the fewer people probably have a lot of knowledge about it. So bringing it in could be like a very valuable addition and be fruitful for somebody else's thought or project. Um, yeah, so kind of well-regulated, kind, intelligent, curious people who mm, believe in believe in love and a good future.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I will like, I will refine this as I try to populate the mansion.
Is there anything you'd like to say about the projects you're working on or this mansion you're referring to?
Yeah, yeah. It act like yeah, it's probably like days or maybe a week or two from like really going public, so could be a good place. So it is a 19th century mansion in the middle of Porto's art district
Mhm.
with a huge garden and a chapel in the garden and a
Hmm.
plum tree. It's very wild right now. But yeah, for being in the middle of the city, it's a lot of nature. This is in northern Portugal. And it's a 6 hour 45 flight from New York, by the way. That is usually very cheap. So it's kind of a similar, like going from New York to San Francisco or to Port is pretty similar. So I kind of, in my mind, it just builds this really nice global axis or part of it, and makes a good entry point as well from the US to Europe,
Mm,
or landing pad. And the idea is to make this a residential kind of co-living, co-working, co-creating project. The mansion has like almost 30 rooms, but a lot of those are like small or not, completely designed for single bedrooms, but it would fit like 10 to 15 people and then have a lot of space for common spaces. So I'm imagining like yoga and meditation room and like arts and craft rooms, of course, co-working spaces, common hangout space, ideally a gym. There's a beautiful like basement which would be a great gallery space. Yeah, basically kind of have everything that people need in order to feel good in their body, mind, and be creative and do work. And the garden, the huge garden, gets a spa, a sauna, so I can kind of, apply what I've been doing up to here. I'm a big sauna stan. Sauna, cold plunge, hot tub, tea tent, and that might be semi-publicly accessible, and help like finance rent as well. So yeah, and then there's some rooms that are like really gorgeous, incredible stucco. Like the mansion is just it's so beautiful in places. It's really wild. So those would, like expensive rooms for people who, because there are people who just like have money and want a nice room and can do that. And then there's also just like smaller rooms, so that it's financially inclusive, ideally. And yeah, probably a private chef. And yeah, basically just create a container that is as conducive to bringing your gift to the world and feeling great while you do it.
mm,
And meeting a lot of other people who will be kind of like wind in your sails.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm. I love Portugal so much, so I'm happy that you're
Mm,
doing that. And I liked the San Francisco, New York, Porto axis that you were drawing. And something that I've learned, let me see how to put this. On my pilgrimage, I've really gotten good at getting a sense of different cities and countries and their characters and what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are, kind of in the same way that I'm doing with you now, like asking you a lot of
mm,
questions and getting to know you specifically, but you can do the same thing with a city or a country. And one model, it's just a model, but that I have found useful for that is, and I'm actually in San Francisco right now. So,
mm,
and I love New York, of course. And
mm,
um, one model that I found useful for comparing cities and regions and countries and so on is, are they a head or a heart or a gut city?
mm.
And so San Francisco obviously is a head city. It's the head of the world right now. It's like the head. It's
Yeah.
the intellectual center capital of the world in a lot of ways, um, or certainly one of them. And then to me, New York is especially Brooklyn is like a heart city where it's there's a lot of ambition and thumos, I would call it, of like
Mm,
desire and they care about music and art there and like yes, there are people in New York who care a lot about money and status, but there are also people who really care about living a vibrant life and a life that they're inspired by and that sort of thing. And then other cities are what I would call a gut city, where they don't necessarily have that ambition. They don't necessarily have um, intellectual aspirations, but they're really grounded and they have almost a sense of cosmology or values or
mm,
and they really typically care about the earth and about other people there. They like put the earth and other people first, and then other things are kind of a secondary to that of like, hey, are we okay here right now? Like, are we taking care of the land? Are we taking care of our immediate friends and family and community? Are we taking care of ourselves? And then from there, yeah, maybe we'll like write a blog post, I guess. I don't know, that seems kind of weird. Um, or start a company. I don't know why you do that, but that's kind of the perspective that they're in. And to me, I really miss each of those qualities when I'm in one of those cities that doesn't have them. Like, I love intellectual places. I love the mind and thinking, and I love ambition and desire and eros and love and emotions. And then I also really love earth and people and being present with people and attuned to them. And anyway, I mention all that because I have a guess, but I wonder how you would characterize Porto or Portugal within that admittedly restrictive taxonomy of head, heart, gut. I have my guess,
Mm.
but I would like to hear you first.
Um, well, for Portugal as a whole, I would definitely say gut.
Uh-huh.
That's my sense. Like, fits very well to a lot of the description you gave. Um, Lisbon is maybe somewhat outside of that, and then Porto, like I would not say I've spent enough time there to have a real sense. Like I feel like I know aspects of the city, but I still feel like somewhat outside of it as well. I would guess probably I would hope gut actually, because the house will provide head and heart.
Hmm.
So like for the city and for the surroundings to be gut is kind of the goal almost, and also the goal of the spa in the garden, for example, and like the yeah, I think gut is a good grounding for head and heart operations. Um,
Hmm.
and the sea is also right there. The land around it is beautiful. Yeah,
Hmm. You
and it's
answered
not
my
as like
follow-up
it's still.
question, so
Oh,
thank you.
oh. What was that?
Oh, just what you wanted the vision of what you're creating to contribute to Porto. Like almost, I was imagining it as like if
Mm,
you fast forwarded 5 years and your thing was really successful, like what effect would that have on the region? And you're like, well, I want to bring the head and heart to it, and I would like it if it provides the gut, and I'm doing the head and heart.
yeah. Yeah, ideally, I would love to like for that project to like seed a scene like a cultural scene of agency and creativity
Hmm.
and um audacious projects.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. I also really care about one of the reasons I care about this model is I want there to be more. I mean, there already is, but I want there to be more conscious and intentional flow between these kinds of cities or region where, like, to me,
Hmm.
for example, when I'm in New York, it's just really obvious that they have head and heart, but that they're missing gut. And there are people there that in fact, my friends there are typically the ones who really have that. Um, but, or if I'm in San Francisco, it's like, well, I think they're missing heart and gut, and they really have the head. And of course, my friends here are the ones that kind of have some of those qualities, and I tend to navigate towards the people that have a good balance. But the city as a whole is, and that's just natural that there would be a specialization or an imbalance, and that's fine. But then I hope that on the global planetary level, we have cross flow and be like, hey, this thing works really well for us here. Can we share that elsewhere? And I would hope that there would be, yeah, trade and commerce and exchange and learning and competition and
Yeah.
collaboration and uh, all of that between region. And that does happen naturally, but I think a model like this offers the chance to do that really intentionally and be like, hey, we are lacking these things, and how can we get more of
Mhm.
those qualities? And then we are really good at this. How can we give that to other people that might be lacking in that? And as opposed to just kind of having it happen totally spontaneously, which is also fine. But yeah.
Yeah, totally agree. Um, and I think there's a lot of things that can be done to kind of yeah, set the environments and the communities up to be conducive to that. Like, for example, a structure of having long-term residents that like create a stable core, so to speak, that functions. And then mid or short term where yeah, members of other communities can come visit or people who are just generally traveling and so that I keep saying cross pollination, but it seems to be an important it's an important concept, I think, for this.
completely, completely. Um, I mean, that's been a core learning for me with my pilgrimage is that I've been in a position to do that cross-pollination
Hmm.
consistently and see what's working in different places and share that and make connections between people that wouldn't be there and wouldn't otherwise necessarily know. Like I remember I stayed in Oklahoma very early in my pilgrimage, and then there was someone else that I connected. My host there was someone who was like, I don't know, in Washington State or something, and it's just like, oh, they might not have connected otherwise, and known about each other, known that they cared about similar problems or something like that.
Hmm.
But um,
Yeah, I think that's incredibly valuable. Like the upside is, can be incalculable. Can
mhm,
also be not much, but I think yeah, it has a lot of positive downstream effects.
mhm. Well, we've covered a lot of territory, and you've been very generous in sharing your life and your perspectives and your stories and your future with us. I wonder if there's anything else that you'd like to talk about or dive more deeply into.
There is, in a sense, there's so much. But wait, I have notes, but I kind of let's see what's alive. Mm. A phrase that I did write down in my notes, I think, but that just came up, and that is like living to the point of tears, which is from a David White interview. Um, Something, yeah, I think something maybe about yeah, I guess what that's pointing to is an intensity of experience and like intimacy with experience. That is like something I value a lot, and that's also seems very core to my being and to the way that I engage with the world, and also to the way that I want to be and want to ideally where I want to be met, which is not always possible, of course, but yeah, there's a way in which I just really enjoy not just the variety, but also kind of the polar ends of the spectra of experience, and have this kind of just this desire to dance with them all. Um, Maybe there's not much more to say about it than that, but it does feel important. And yeah, I mean, I do have a bunch of topics that I could plug into, but I also feel like mm, maybe we've covered, like I feel like kind of the ground that we've covered makes sense as a whole. Feels kind of good, and we can always speak again.
Sounds good. Well, I really enjoyed hearing about your life and your story and your perspectives, and I think I'm going to be digesting a fair bit of what you said.
Mm.
And a lot of it was things that I'd sort of inferred or pieced together over the years from knowing you and talking to you in person, but um, it's really valuable to me to see it in context and see the larger picture. And yeah, I feel grateful that you shared yourself so fully and opened your heart in that way. And uh, I'm excited about the project that you're starting and curious where that will go. And yeah, I hope that you learn and grow a lot through that personally and that it really serves the people that
Mm.
go there and serves the world. And yeah, I'm excited to see what will happen with that.
Mm.
Mm,
Me too.
mm,
Thank you so much for your care and the work you do. This has been really fun.
mm. My pleasure. Thanks for speaking with me, Leona.